Police say 33-year-old Lacresha Black was shot and killed outside her residence in Springfield Township. Hours later, her wife, Terea Brown, was dead after a pursuit and police shooting in Indiana. That alone is shocking. But once you go through the timeline piece by piece, you start to see just how quickly this marriage ended in bloodshed. It was still early. The day had barely started. On Lincoln Avenue, people were waking up, getting ready for work, getting children ready for school, doing the same things they always did. Then gunfire cut through that morning and everything changed. When officers reached the scene, they found Lacresha outside the front door of her home with multiple gunshot wounds. She died there at the place where she should have been safest, not down the block, not in some hidden area, right outside her own door. And before that neighborhood could even catch its breath, the case was moving north. The woman police identified as the suspect was already gone. She had left Ohio in a black Chevrolet Cruze, and within a few hours, that same case would stretch into Indiana and end in another deadly shooting. That is what makes this story hit so hard. It did not unfold over several days. It did not wait for people to process one scene before the next one started. It came fast. One woman dead outside her home, a suspect on the run, a chase on the interstate, gunfire again. Then silence. This is the story of Lacresha Black and Terea Brown, a marriage that ended in a way no one can take back, and a mourning that left two families with nothing but grief, questions, and a timeline that gets heavier the closer you look at it. Lacresha Black was 33 years old. In the reporting that followed, one small detail kept standing out. The man who called 911 after finding her said she was his caretaker. That tells you something about who she was in other people's lives. She was someone people depended on, someone tied to daily routines, responsibilities, and care. The kind of person whose presence was part of how other people got through the day. That matters because cases like this can strip a person down to the worst thing that happened to them: a name, an age, a crime scene. But Lacresha had a life before this morning. People knew her, people relied on her, and now those same people were left trying to understand how her life ended outside her own front door. Terea Brown was 42. Public reporting identified her as Lacresha's wife. The two had been married in December 2023. So by the time this happened in November 2024, they had not even been married a full year. That detail matters too. People often think the most dangerous relationships are the ones everyone has already been watching fall apart for years. But some relationships turn sharp much faster than the people around them realize. A short marriage does not mean a simple marriage. Time alone does not measure how much pressure can build between two people living inside the same problems. A friend who spoke to local news described Lacresha and Terea's relationship as on again, off again. The same friend said they fought often. That does not explain what happened, and it does not excuse anything, but it does tell you this was not some sudden clash between strangers. There was already tension here. There was history here. There was conflict that people close to them had noticed. And that is where stories like this often sit in a painful place. From the outside, people may see arguments and assume the relationship is just rough. They may hear that a couple keeps breaking up and getting back together and think it is messy, but not deadly. They may know two people are having problems and still have no idea how close that situation is to real violence. Then, one morning, police tape goes up, and everybody starts looking back at the same details with completely different eyes. That is part of what gives this case its weight. It is not only about what happened in the final hours. It is also about how little distance there was between a troubled marriage and a deadly scene. The first thing most people in that neighborhood knew was that something terrible had happened. Just after 7 a.m., police were called to the 2100 block of Lincoln Avenue. When they arrived, Lacresha Black was outside the front door of her residence, shot multiple times. She was pronounced dead at the scene. That image alone is hard to shake. A woman lying outside her own home, morning light, police cars pulling up, neighbors looking out from behind windows and doors, trying to understand what they were seeing. One of those neighbors, Linda Sales, later said police knocked on her door and told her there was a bullet hole in her window. That detail widens the scene in an instant. This was not violence that stayed neatly between two people. The gunfire reached into nearby homes. It crossed property lines. It put other lives at risk. Even the people who were not the target were pulled into the blast of it. At 7:07 that morning, someone called 911. Reporting later said the caller was a man who described Lacresha as his caretaker. He did not know the shooter's name, but he said he had seen the woman there before. That call says a lot without trying to. It captures the confusion of those first minutes. Someone is down, someone nearby is trying to make sense of the scene, and the person responsible is already gone. Not long after, investigators identified Terea Brown as the suspect. They said she had fled in a dark-colored 2014 Chevrolet Cruze before first responders got there. A description of the vehicle went out to other agencies. From that point on, this was no longer just a homicide scene in Springfield Township. It was now a manhunt moving across state lines. That shift is one of the most striking things about this case. The neighborhood was still absorbing the first scene, while the second scene was already forming miles away. People back in Ohio were waking up to news of a woman killed outside her home. At the same time, police in Indiana were being pulled into the search for the person accused of doing it. Lacresha Black was dead before the morning had fully started. Police say the suspect was her wife, and by late morning, that suspect would be dead too. By the time investigators started piecing the scene together on Lincoln Avenue, one thing was already clear. This was a close, personal killing. Lacresha Black was not found far from home. She was found outside the front door of her residence. That one detail changes the feel of the whole case. It tells you the violence came right to the threshold. There was no distance between where she lived and where she died. Public reporting described her injuries as multiple gunshot wounds. Some outlets also reported she had been shot in the head. However it was described, the result was the same. She died at the scene. There was no second chance to get her to safety, no long hospital fight, no last-minute turn. The damage was immediate and it was final. For neighbors, the shock set in quickly. Crime tape went up. Officers moved through the area. People started learning that the woman killed there was someone they knew, someone they had seen, someone who had been alive only minutes earlier. At the same time, they were learning another terrifying detail. The person police believed was responsible had already left. That changes the mood of a scene fast. A homicide is one thing. A homicide where the suspect is gone is something else. It means the fear does not stay contained to one address. It travels with the possibility that the person who did it is still moving, still armed, still deciding what to do next. The 911 call added another layer. The caller did not sound like someone laying out a neat sequence of events. He sounded like someone trying to understand what had just happened. He told dispatch Lacresha was his caretaker. He said he had seen the woman before, but did not know her name. That is the reality of so many cases like this. The first account is rarely clean. It comes out of panic, confusion, and shock. Meanwhile, detectives worked to identify the suspect and the vehicle. They said Terea Brown had fled in a black Chevrolet Cruze. Once that information was broadcast, the case moved beyond Hamilton County. Investigators in Ohio now needed help from agencies in another state because the person they were looking for was no longer nearby. That is one of the cruel patterns in cases like this. The victim's world stops in one place while the person accused of ending it keeps moving. Around 9:30 that morning, Indiana State Police found Brown's vehicle on Interstate 65 in Clinton County. Troopers, tried to stop the car, but Brown did not pull over. Instead, the case turned into a pursuit. And this is where the story gets even more intense, because the timeline barely leaves any room to breathe. A woman is killed in Springfield Township just after 7 a.m. A vehicle alert goes out. Less than 3 hours later, troopers in Indiana are behind that same vehicle on the interstate. Same morning, same case. Just in a different state now. Police said the pursuit continued north until Brown exited at State Road 28 near Frankfort. The vehicle eventually stopped near a gas station and County Road. At that point, according to Indiana State Police, a shot was fired from Brown's vehicle, and troopers fired as well. That moment is where the case narrows down in 2 seconds. A moving chase becomes a stopped vehicle. A wanted suspect becomes an armed suspect in a standoff. And everyone on that scene now has to make split-second decisions with almost no room for error. The early reporting was careful about one thing. Investigators were still working to determine who fired the initial shot, and it was not immediately clear whether Brown had been struck by police gunfire. That uncertainty matters because it reminds you that the final minutes in Indiana were not instantly simple just because they were deadly. There was still a lot investigators needed to sort out. What is clear is that no troopers were injured. SWAT was called to the scene. Officers approached the vehicle using an armored vehicle. When they entered, Brown was found dead inside. A firearm was recovered from the car. No one else was inside. So now the case had 2 scenes and 2 deaths.
Tonight, Indiana State Police are trying to figure out how a person died after a shooting involving Indiana State troopers.
Now, it all happened this morning in Clinton County at a gas station off of I-65 and State Road 28 in Frankfort. Anna Chalker rushed to the scene when we first learned about this shooting, and that's where we find her live tonight. Anna, how is the scene being worked now?
Anne-Marie, Felicia, it has been nearly 6 hours since that shooting happened, and I'll tell you, it's still an active investigation out here. I want to step out of the way just so you can see that right now. Several state police cars still out here. A lot of the focus still on the car, the suspect car. It is behind that white truck right now. We did see a tow truck pull up within the last few minutes, getting ready to take that suspect vehicle away. Again, that suspect did die in this situation. Now, I do want to show you video from this scene when it was active early this afternoon when we first got here. This is from a traffic camera where you can see the moments when state police were in a standoff with this suspect. ISP says this all started as a traffic stop on I-65 this morning. The department tells us troopers then chased the suspect here to this Amoco gas station, where at some point gunfire was exchanged and the suspect was killed. Now, we're still working to learn who fired their gun first, whether it was the state trooper or the suspect. And state police tell us they are working with several agencies on this investigation.
We're just going to use every precaution that we can and use all the tools that we can at our disposal to make sure that we come to a safe conclusion to every incident. So we want to make sure not only we're safe, that the public is also safe, and we can come to that safe conclusion.
The department says the suspect was the only person in that vehicle at the time of the shooting. Now, again, you're back here live. A large investigation still going on here at this Amoco gas station just outside of Frankfort this evening. We've been here since about noon this afternoon. A big scene, and I've also reached out to state police for more information regarding the shooting, and as we get that information, we'll have it both here on air and online.
All right, thank you so much, Anna Chalker, reporting live in Clinton County.
And now to the latest in that police shooting in Clinton County. State police now tell us this all unfolded at a gas station near State Road 28 at the Frankfort exit. Our Chase Howell joins me in studio tonight after learning the suspect who died was connected to a crime scene more than 150 miles away. Chase?
Scott, according to police, she's believed to have shot and killed another woman outside of a Cincinnati apartment this morning. And what I learned from their Facebooks, the two had been married to each other for less than a year.
This is 911. Do you have an emergency?
Yes,
Someone's dead. She got shot.
She got shot in the head?
Yes, with bullets.
That was the 911 call made to Springfield Police, a township in Cincinnati, that led officers to find 33-year-old Lacresha Black shot to death in front of her home Monday morning. The shooter, police say, was Terea Brown. Investigators say after the shooting, Brown jumped into her car and took off. That's when Springfield Township Police put out a regional alert to other law enforcement agencies. Brown would later be seen in Indiana. Indiana State Police say Brown led troopers on a chase that ended at this gas station in Clinton County. Officers on scene say a gunshot came from Brown's car, prompting officers to shoot.
We appreciate all the response from the surrounding agencies. We had people from here, from Clinton County, Tippecanoe County, Boone County, so agencies from all around came to assist with this, and we appreciate their quick response to assist our officers.
At this hour, state police say it's unclear if Brown took her own life or was shot by police. No troopers were harmed. Reporting, Chase Howell, 13 News.
The first scene was a residential doorway in Springfield Township where Lacresha Black was found killed outside her home. The second was a gas station area in Clinton County, Indiana, where the woman accused of killing her was found dead inside a car after a chase and gunfire with police. And in between those two scenes lies the hardest part of this whole case, the human break, the collapse of whatever was left of this marriage, the moment where conflict turned into murder, the choice to leave, the miles driven after that, and the fact that there would be no trial, no full public courtroom record, no long cross-examination laying everything out piece by piece. That is what makes cases like this feel unfinished, even when the timeline is known. You can know what happened in sequence and still never get the full answer to why it happened the way it did. By then, local reporting was also filling in one more important piece. Brown and Black were married, and at least one friend described their relationship as unstable, on again and off again, with frequent fights. That does not solve the case, but it tells you the killing did not happen in a vacuum. It happened inside an intimate relationship that had already become strained. And once that detail is public, everything gets heavier. Because now this is not just a shooting, it is a wife dead outside her home, and another wife dead after fleeing across state lines. There was never going to be a normal courtroom ending to this case. The suspect was dead by the end of the same morning. That meant no arrest photo taken days later. No hearing months down the road where families sit on opposite sides of a courtroom waiting for a plea. No long trial where witnesses are called one by one and the whole relationship is unpacked in public. The legal process that usually gives a case its final shape was cut off almost immediately. So what remains is the timeline, the reporting, and the people left behind. For the neighbors on Lincoln Avenue that morning did not end when the police cars left. One woman had to look at the window a bullet had gone through and think about how close that violence came to her own family. She later said she was thankful she had been sleeping in the back, thankful her grandchildren were not there because that was where they spent their time. That is the kind of detail that sits with people, not because it is dramatic, but because it is real. It shows just how easily this could have been even worse. For the people who knew Lacresha, there is also the quiet violence of what comes after: phone calls, confirmation, shock. Then the long process of trying to talk about someone in the past tense when that still does not feel possible, and the facts do not offer much comfort. Lacresha Black was 33 years old. She was found outside the front door of her home with multiple gunshot wounds. The person police identified as the suspect was her wife, Terea Brown, 42. Brown fled the scene in a Chevrolet Cruze, crossed into Indiana, was found by troopers on Interstate 65, failed to stop, exited near State Road 28, and after gunfire at the end of that pursuit, was found dead inside the vehicle. A gun was recovered from the car. No troopers were injured. That is the official frame of the case. Clean, direct, efficient. But human loss is never that tidy. Because inside those facts are two lives that had been tied to each other, a marriage that had not even made it to a full year, a relationship that, according to a friend, was on again, off again, and full of fights, a neighborhood that had no choice but to wake up inside somebody else's worst decision, a community trying to understand how a home became a murder scene before breakfast. And that is where this case keeps its hold on people. Not because every mystery is solved, some are not. It is still possible to line up the broad facts and feel like the center of the story is missing. What exactly happened in the final conversation before the shots? How long had the tension between these two women been getting worse? Did people around them know the danger had reached this point? Was there a moment when this could still have gone another way? Those questions come naturally, but they are also the questions that haunt families when there is no trial to force every surviving detail into the open. Cases involving intimate partners often leave people reaching for a clean lesson, something simple they can say at the end to make the pain feel organized. But a case like this resists that. What remains is the warning written into the timeline itself. Violence inside a relationship does not always build in ways outsiders can clearly see. A relationship can look troubled without people grasping how dangerous it has become, and when it breaks, it can break fast. That does not mean every argument leads here. It means no one should dismiss patterns of instability, fear, control, or repeated conflict just because the full danger is not visible yet. Lacresha Black should still be here. Instead, her name is attached forever to one morning on Lincoln Avenue, a doorway, gunfire, and a case that raced into another state before the first scene had even settled. Terea Brown is part of that same story now, not because her death erases anything and not because it balances anything, but because it closed off the one process that might have forced the full truth further into the light. So what is left is the cold outline of the morning and the damage it carried. A woman killed outside her own home, a wife who fled, an interstate chase, gunfire in Indiana, two families left with grief, and a community that learned in the space of a few hours how quickly private conflict can turn into public devastation. That is why this case stays with people, because it is not only about death, it is about proximity, about how close danger can sit to ordinary life, about how a front door, a neighborhood, window, an interstate exit, and a gas station lot can all become part of the same story before noon. And once you see the whole timeline laid out like that, the hardest part is not understanding that it happened. The hardest part is understanding how fast it happened.